I'm Philippa Layton-Jones, and over the next hour, we have some exciting stories that we're going to explore that will give you a glimpse of what is to come. Next, we're going to look at how technology is reimagining the way we work and transforming medical treatment. Abbott became a household name during the pandemic for creating the gold standard in testing for coronavirus. Now, they are tapping into the Internet of Things to make patient care smart. Please join me in welcoming today my roundtable of leaders on heart health, diabetes, and neurology to look at how technology is helping to transform healthcare as we know it. So let me quickly introduce them. Dr. Phil Adamson is Chief Medical Officer for the Heart Failure Division at Abbott. Dr. Fiona Gupte is a neurologist at Mount Sinai Health System. Dr. Leslie Saxon is an interventional cardiologist and executive director of the Center for Body Computing at the University of Southern California. And Mark Taub is divisional vice president of technology operations for diabetes care at Abbott. Welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us. Now, I want to start by talking about the future of many things today, but of course, we're also talking about the future of healthcare, which has seen such seismic changes over the past 12 months. So I'd like to start by asking how the way we think about and use connected health devices and remote care changed or shifted over the past year. Let's start here with Phil and Mark, please, and then let's turn to Leslie and Fiona for the sort of clinical frontline perspective. Phil, can we start with you?
Sure, and thank you, Philippa, for having me. The last year, over a year, has changed the way we deliver medical care dramatically. We've gone from traditional face-to-face encounters to assess patients with chronic diseases, to manage their disease, renew their medications, encourage them to take medical therapies. That has moved almost overnight to almost 100% virtual medicine. We've seen about a 10-year progress, honestly, in the last year with the advent of virtual medicine. And what we've seen also is an increased importance on implanted sensors or other sensor-based technologies that can give information that one would traditionally obtain from a face-to-face visit. So there's been a tremendous change. I think that tremendous change has sort of been the silver lining of this horrible pandemic, in that we have accelerated the technologies and innovations to help patients and their outcomes.
Mark, let's turn it to you.
Sure. Thank you so much. We developed our continuous glucose monitoring technology with digital care in mind from the very beginning. The Freestyle Libre is a sensor that's worn in the back of the arm. It's about the size of 2 stacked quarters. And a patient is able to bring their reader or their phone up to the back of their sensor, and they're able to see their glucose value, not just their reading where they are at that instant, but the last 8 hours of glucose history, how they got there, and a trend arrow indicating where their glucose is going and the speed at which it's moving. And remote monitoring during the pandemic, it's been vital for frontline healthcare workers and people with diabetes. In the US and in Canada and many other countries, we've seen Freestyle Libre being used in hospitals for the very first time, and that's let frontline healthcare workers remotely monitor patients and see their glucose levels in real time and their glucose history, while conserving personal protective equipment, as well as maintaining appropriate social distancing protocols. We've seen a major uptick in the use of technology like Freestyle Libre and of our digital health tools, our Freestyle Libre Link Up and Freestyle Libre Link over the last year, because it enables people with diabetes and their healthcare team to see their glucose levels and histories in real time and get actionable information outside of that doctor's office. So our goal has always been to make managing diabetes simple and easy, as effective as it can be. And working together with diabetes leaders in insulin delivery and digital health coaching, Abbott's really paving the way for the future of connected diabetes care by simplifying that user experience so patients can live their best lives while managing their diabetes.
And Leslie and Fiona, let's hear from you because you're working sort of more towards the clinical end of this. Tell us how you see remote care and the changes in health devices over the past year, because we've just heard about great progress being made there. How's it figuring from your perspective? Let's come to Leslie.
Thanks. It's been fantastic in the sense that as a busy clinician and someone who has always been interested in researching novel ways to deliver care enabled by digital, it's sort of jailbreaked healthcare. And so everybody has a visual now that healthcare doesn't have to be a pressurized individual encounter with a patient unclothed in a room and a busy doctor. It can occur more continuously. It can, and both physicians and patients know that. As a physician, I think for someone working in a medical system, we're so burdened by compliance and the burden of just getting a patient through the system that really inhibits our ability to completely care for them. For patients, the same thing happens now with the waivers and everything that occurred in response to COVID. It just wasn't that we could do a televisit, right? It was that suddenly there was this ruthless efficiency that digital offers. So
Yeah.
as you know, precise and as a Google search is, suddenly I could FaceTime a patient, or I could use a more constrained other system the medical system had put up that maybe was a little kludgy, but so I could just FaceTime and the patients saw how they could easily reach me. I could include their daughters or their sons in that visit, wherever they lived, and suddenly everybody gets a visual on it, including the healthcare system, more traditional system that says, wait, we don't have to have the valet overwhelmed every day and we can, you know, provide better care. So now everyone is just excited about the potential of that, and it takes cost out. To me, that's the business reason, right? This efficiency takes out a lot of cost. Now, it'll disrupt other things. What are the new care models? Where do the doctors live? Where do they work? Where do the patients go? Who needs to come in? But it just jailbreaks and decompresses everything. So now healthcare is as much a part of our lives as looking for a restaurant, you know, in terms of the immediacy and the curation of what that'll be. So I just feel that it's been seismic in its ability to see the possibilities of this model. That's so much
Absolutely.
less constrained.
Sounds, yeah, game changing. Fiona, let's ask you the same question.
Yes, absolutely. And I would agree with the game changing aspect. As a neurologist and a movement disorder specialist, one of my main areas of focus is something called deep brain stimulation, which is essentially using a brain pacemaker in which electrodes are placed into a target area of the brain, and electricity is delivered to these targets for certain conditions such as Parkinson's disease or essential tremors. So essentially what we've learned from deep brain stimulation is that we can treat disease states with not just drugs, but essentially electricity. Previously, patients had to drive in or travel in from, you know, tremendous amounts of distances to find specialized centers in order for these pacemakers to be adjusted and maintained. And it required, you know, serial adjustments to get a patient optimized with regards to just symptomatic control, minimizing adverse effects. So this has been a whole paradigm shift with regards to telemedicine. And this Abbott virtual clinic is really beyond telemedicine. It's not just allowing me to see and assess a patient from a video perspective, but through virtual clinic, I can make these adjustments and almost deliver a digital prescription instantaneously on a virtual platform. So essentially, it's now deep brain stimulation is considered bioelectric medicine in so many ways. And the telemedicine concept has just supported this robustly.
Fantastic. So during that time of huge acceleration that we've just talked about, you know, as Phil said, there's been sort of like 10 years worth of progress in 1 year. What have we learned about connected health devices and patient behavior? And what, if anything, surprised you about this? Leslie, I want to start with you.
Well, I think there's a notion that we've often fought against in our research that certain devices or digital is a rarefied tool of the young and not the elderly, and that people can't learn to use it. If you meet the needs of a patient in a way that's more holistic, that's less judgmental, a lot of the things that plague patient trust in our system, they immediately become literate in that digital thing, in the same way that a person may want to talk to their grandchild, so they find that they can do that and connect. So I think what I found most surprising is people's ability to get on these platforms, to engage in them, And what I love is learning from a patient, not this patriarchal system, which gets blown up by the democratization of digital. So I can have an elderly patient who bring me their heart rhythm diagnosis from an Apple Watch ECG and have read about that. And I will harmonize that with a medical, more regulated medical device, maybe, or they'll get something else, but that just the ability to learn from patients for everyone to be creative in delivering a better model of care, a more collaborative care. And that's what's needed to really get the outcomes. What's always bothered me about people sort of knocking American medicine and its cost and everything is we do have the best stuff in many ways. We just don't knit it together. And we do innovate. We do come out with the most discovery in general, in my view. But our outcomes are lagged because of that lack of integration. And so this provides that in some way that's really satisfying.
Excellent. Fiona, patient behavior, what have you seen?
I think it's just how patients have embraced this technology. Initially, I had thought maybe it was good for people who are coming into our specialized center, from a very, very large distance away, 150, 200-mile radius. But, I have patients who I'm doing virtual clinic for those that are far away. But even patients who are down the block from my clinic in New York City, really embrace this. I think the comforts of their own home, I think being in their own environment, and just allowing better access to the clinician. I can see more patients now because, I'm not necessarily having to book out just my clinic with space and time. So it's been really just so wonderful how patients have really embraced this technology.
Fantastic. Phil, what about the sort of data end of this? What are you seeing at the kind of like broader level?
We've seen a significant, I guess, paradox is the way I'd portray it. On one hand, patients are avoiding healthcare during the pandemic, and that can be catastrophic. For example, in someone with an acute heart attack may stay at home out of fear of contacting the coronavirus in the emergency department, and they die. And so home deaths have gone up significantly in many places of the world that have been affected by the pandemic. On the other hand, patients with chronic diseases such as heart failure have exhibited in many clinical trial settings and other settings a unique change in their behavior to protect themselves. And that may be fear motivated, it may be distancing, it may be stay-at-home orders. But we certainly have seen patients take better care of themselves, and as a result have a decreased need for hospitalization for rescue therapies when they get sick. So on one hand, we see people avoiding healthcare and not doing well with that. On the other hand, we see people's behaviors change dramatically, and that changes their outcomes. So, we can't sustain that, and no one can expect a pandemic could be the answer for hospitalizations or decompensation. But on the other hand, we have certainly documented these kinds of changes in our patient populations.
Excellent, thank you. So as the pandemic has shown, connected health technologies can be used across healthcare, and you've described many conditions there. But what conditions are benefiting from the use of connected health devices, and what's driving this innovation? I want to go first to Fiona, please, and Leslie, and then Mark and Phil will turn to you. Fiona.
I think there's so much potential here for so many conditions from a neurological perspective. We're really dealing with neurodegenerative disease states that are so dynamic and change over time. So, to have, quick assessments of patients, being able to monitor them, being able to treat them now with remote care, it plays such a significant role. So, again, very common conditions, including things like Parkinson's disease and essential tremors, particularly with the use of deep brain stimulation, have been revolutionized by this approach.
Okay. Thank you. And Leslie?
Yeah, I think even with COVID itself, as we evolved our care paradigms, what we realized was if we took an emergency room patient with COVID pneumonia who had a requirement for oxygen, but maybe didn't need to come in, we could send that patient home with an oximeter, a thermometer, a symptom checker, an app potentially that help provide them the information they need and track them. And so they suddenly have engagement, and you're leveraging that patient in their own COVID treatment. Similarly, I think what we're learning is we can aggregate these technologies to provide the patient with a more holistic tool set so they can manage their disease. It's not one device, it's not one diagnostic. It's the software and the services that patient needs to manage the entirety of their needs, their diagnostics, their therapies, their drug adherence. What do I eat? How much activity can I do? Providing that as a service is a very important thing, and will drive digital and remote healthcare models.
So incredible work going on. And Mark, let's hear from you.
Yeah, thank you. I've spent my career trying to simplify the management of diabetes, and now it's focused a lot on making devices that are smaller, faster, more connected, really mesh with people's lives so that they can connect patients and manage their diabetes more simply and easier and outside of the walls of the clinic. We've always known that our glucose sensing technology has enormous potential to manage diabetes, and we have great experience in bringing these technologies and these innovations to help people with diabetes. But now we're trying to see how can we move that technology out of just to manage diabetes and help people manage their health goals in new ways. So last year we introduced Libre Sense, which is the world's first biosensor designed for athletes. It's available in Europe right now, and it gives cyclists and runners and swimmers the ability to monitor their glucose levels and measure what's happening inside their body and know how to fuel up and avoid fatigue and reach their athletic performance goals. So we're looking to how can we take this technology and leverage it, even outside of the disease management space, and how to help people, reach their own health goals, whatever they may be.
And Phil, let's hear your take on this.
Well, if you take, for example, the congestive heart failure is a disease process that causes an accumulation of fluid in the body that most commonly leads to hospitalization. And many years ago, we hypothesized that if we were able to sense that fluid buildup, we may be able to act sooner and prevent hospitalizations, and developed a system called the CardioMEMS heart failure system in general to bring a simple way to manage patients with a complex disease, similar to what Mark mentioned. And what we've seen is that this opportunity to gain information from a patient that's remote has a variety of different benefits, both to the patient and to the provider, and maybe even to the healthcare system, in a sense of reducing costs and reducing hospitalizations. But the safety and the surety that patients experience when they're monitored in a sense, in an implantable sensor situation, is remarkable. Patients know that their system is being watched carefully, and they know that they can feel safe, and that locus of control comes back, burdens of depression start to melt away. And we see a comprehensive evaluation and treatment of patients with a horrible chronic disease. However, sensors must have information that provide actionable data to providers. They can't simply be a data stream without meaning. And what we have discovered, it's similar to diabetes control with monitoring of glucose, is that heart failure control with monitoring of pulmonary artery pressures is a superior means to not only generally manage these patients, but now to effectively perform virtual medicine.
Thank you. And I want to remind our audience that there is a short Q&A section at the end of this panel, so please do submit your questions. And I want to bring it back to you, Mark, because the concept of access and affordability has been gaining attention lately. How do connected health devices, you mentioned so many of them, and remote healthcare fit into this access and affordability conversation? And why is that important for both individual but also public health?
Sure. We know that it's not enough to deliver breakthrough technologies without considering how to make them affordable and accessible to the millions of people who need them. For us, for diabetes care, it's for the people with diabetes who need them. And that's why when we developed the Freestyle Libre system, we took a unique approach from the start, and we designed the Freestyle Libre technology to be priced at a level where it was going to be accessible and broadly available to the millions of people with diabetes who need to have access to it. We've also partnered with groups like the American Diabetes Association to break down barriers that limit access to high quality medical technologies like continuous glucose monitoring, trying to tackle those barriers to care and provide people with diabetes access to the latest technologies to better manage their diabetes, no matter their race or their income level or their background. And we believe, I think all of us on this panel, that the future of medical technology will continue to harness the power of connected technologies, so that care can be effectively delivered outside of hospitals and doctors' offices, and further eliminate some of those barriers to people who live in locations and have circumstances where healthcare isn't as readily accessible.
Thank you for that. I want to turn quickly to Fiona and Leslie on the notion of trust, right? Because this is when we're talking about connected devices, there can be that sort of question of what about when the human touch is sort of somewhat lost. And key to remote care is obviously that patient trust in the new technologies, how they work, trust in the process of remote real-time monitoring. How do you engender trust among your patients and show them that the relationship is still there and that these technologies in many ways can actually give them their lives back? Leslie, let's come first to you.
Yeah, I don't think you reinvent the analog Norman Rockwell kind of medical world with digital. It's a new model of intimacy between a physician and their patient, and it's just as intimate. And it doesn't involve judgment. It involves unprecedented access to experts. That's what engenders the trust. You can get a good doctor who's expert in the area, who you can get integrative care, and hopefully you can get information related to you and your specifics. We've delivered medicine in such a cookbook fashion. This dose of drug was shown in a trial, so it's right for you. Some of the technologies that Phil described imbue trust in a patient because they realize that these early markers of decompensation you can get with digital, whether it's diabetes or heart failure, if you act on those, you feel better, you stay out of the hospital. That brings a lot of trust. You can disclose to your doctor in a way where you're not feeling judged, even if they're judging you or not. You still feel like maybe they think I'm not a good person or smart enough or whatever the issues are. So you kind of get rid of a lot of the stuff that stands in the way of patient care in an analog world that I think is kind of fascinating and needs further study.
Great. And Fiona, let's come quickly to you.
Yeah, so the way that we establish clinical rapport and just day-to-day visits, is the same for virtual care. I think you have to take the extra time, educate patients, and just, really sort of connect with them virtually. I have found no issues with doing that. I also think really making the technology patient-centric is super important, making it easy to use, making sure that patients feel that they have control. For example, when I do my DBS programming, virtually patients actually start the session and then they actually stop the session at the end, so really giving them full control throughout. And again, ongoing education, whether it's through history or on the technology and outcomes and what to expect, I think is just really key. So just time and just making everything patient-centric.
Patient centricity, fantastic. I'm going to come to the audience questions in just a second, but I just want to turn to the future. That's what we're talking about today. Let's look to the sort of post-pandemic world, if we may say that. What will remote care and connected health technologies look like, and what's the opportunity for growth in this area of medtech? And a sort of follow-up, how will these next-gen connected health devices further improve health for individuals and for society at large? Fiona, let's come first to you.
I think we've learned so much as we've established, and I think telemedicine is here to stay. As a movement disorder specialist, the majority of my patients have access with essentially moving and getting around. So I think they should all sort of have the ability to have access, to telemedicine within this patient population. And I think it just fills a major unmet need with or without social distancing requirements, and just solves, again, the fundamental problem of access in medical care. So I think we're learning a lot more. And if we can take, these concepts and really provide better access to everyone, again, it's here to stay.
Fantastic. Leslie, let's ask you the same question.
Well, I think the patient will truly be the customer. Software, services, devices, whether regulated or not, are going to have to align around the patient's needs and more holistically. In terms of them managing their processes, whether they're well or sick, their nutrition, their medical education, they will curate and decide who wins in that game. So the marketplace is very open to regulated, non-regulated companies, and it's going to scale very quickly. So this is the Wall Street Journal. From a business perspective, I just think it's fascinating because there are a lot of horses in the race. And they need to collaborate almost to get the best result. But I think it'll be sustainable and scale, hopefully, to deliver on that promise of global healthcare that without digital is never happening, right? Excellence in global healthcare. To me, that's the standard, right? That's the North Star.
Right. That's exciting to you as a doctor as well, right? That's what you want to be seeing. Mark, let's ask you the same question.
Sure. Like Fiona said, the importance of making the devices easy to use for the patient as well as the healthcare provider, making sure that they integrate into the healthcare system. Chronic diseases that we've been talking about, like managing diabetes, they're difficult. They're difficult for the patient to deal with every day. They're difficult for the healthcare team. And for diabetes, it's not just about tracking your glucose number. It's about making decisions throughout the course of the day. It's about making decisions about how therapy should be optimized. Advancements are allowing us to integrate Freestyle Libre with insulin delivery systems so people can get decision-making support, so they can take away some of the cognitive burden of managing these chronic diseases. Just yesterday, one of our partners, Bigfoot Biomedical, announced clearance of their Unity system. It's a smart insulin pen cap that connects with our Freestyle Libre 2 sensor and displays automated real-time insulin dosing recommendations right on the pen cap. So we see tremendous progress in this area, and ultimately we'll have even smarter, more automated systems to deliver personalized care and empower people, in this case with diabetes, but the same types of advancements throughout our healthcare system.
I love that. Removing the cognitive burden, so important when you're dealing with healthcare and serious conditions, right? Phil, can I ask you the same question?
Certainly, I think that the future will integrate multiple different sensor data streams, both to the provider and most importantly to the patient. Again, giving them the opportunity to benefit from the data that they produce with the devices that are with them. I think that remote management should render distance irrelevant. I mean, we now today have individuals in Florida, physicians in Florida managing people in Brazil. And they do a great job of managing them because the data they receive from the remote sensor essentially reproduces what they would get in a face-to-face encounter. So essentially, if the data streams continue to give the kinds of information that one would want when you see a patient face-to-face, then I think that we are able to envision a world in which someone in Western Idaho can have a physician in Los Angeles take care of them without having to have the distance be an issue for them.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. We've got some great audience questions. In the interest of time, I will probably direct these, though I think there probably would be interesting answers from you all. So first question, are the patient outcomes still similar for those who seek telemedicine versus in-person treatment? I think if we could start here with Leslie.
Yeah, this is an area we actively research, and there needs to be much more data, and it depends what the condition is. But in general, I would say similar, if not superior, depending on what the sort of mode and continuity of the care paradigm is. But I don't think there's any data. I haven't seen anything, although there isn't a lot of data that it's inferior.
Okay, thank you. And Fiona, I would just turn that same question to you.
I would absolutely echo that. I like that similar, if not superior, approach. And I think clinically speaking, patients are very happy and doing well.
Phil, do you have any data on that?
We do. In fact, most of our validation data for implanted sensors require demonstration that a disease management system is superior when based on that data stream. And we've demonstrated that both with Freestyle Libre as well as with the CardioMEMS heart failure system. And as we see each disease that's amenable to monitoring remotely, we'll see studies to demonstrate that this approach is better or superior, as Leslie mentioned, to usual care.
Brilliant. And it must be fascinating to keep watching that data and see how it evolves over time. I'm just going to turn to a second question. I think we probably have time for one more. What new skill sets will be required of patients to take advantage of these new technological advances in medical care? Fiona, I'm going to give this one to you.
I don't know. It's not a whole lot. I mean, like I said, even our most tech unsavvy patients have been able to pick this up with the right amount of education and time. So I don't think there's going to be a whole new set of skill sets, at least on my end.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you so much. We've covered so much. I think we're running out of time, which is a shame because there's so much to talk about. I think the great takeaway for me has been removing that cognitive burden and also the amazing acceleration of this trend. As Phil said, 10 years in 1 year is something that's forced to be reckoned with. So you're all incredibly busy. Thank you so much for your time today. Fascinating conversation. I'm very grateful for your work as well. So we'll let you get back to it. Thank you so much for joining us at the Future of Everything Festival.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.